So the Senior Bowl is officially over, and we are like 4 or 5 days post Senior Bowl game. And today we're going to talk about some of the winners, losers, and we'll talk about some of the guys that did not impress me enough. I think there's been a lot of movement across the board on some OT ones, or offensive tackle ones, in the 2025 NFL Draft. We got some guys that may not have impressed as much, and we're going to talk about all of this, man. I'm excited for this one. I should start this video right away with putting it out there that, I have access to the actual tape from practice, right? I have access to the actual game, log right in and watch every single play. And I've done that, right? At this point, I've watched every single play from the team drills, the one-on-one drills. I've watched the actual game, and, I don't just quickly go through it. I study the actual, guys that are out there, right? The guys that I really, really want to hone in on, especially. And we'll rewatch every single play at least 2 or 3 times. And I say that because my opinion in this video is going to be a lot different than some of the opinions you guys might have heard on social media. My opinion is going to be different than what other people are putting out there. And truth be told, I also think a little bit differently than other people, right? Some people might hold the one-on-one drills a lot higher when they evaluate talent. To me, one-on-one drills do not matter, right? It does not impact anything at all. To me, what's most important is always going to be the team stuff, the full 11 on 11. And the game is by far the most important factor. And what's interesting about the Senior Bowl is a lot of people kind of tune out after that final third practice, right? They don't even watch the game. But I'm excited to talk about this one, man, because we got a lot of really, really good movement that kind of happened, things we had to see, and we're going to get right into it. And we're going to talk about the first guy here that I really want to get into. This is a guy that I've already spoke about on this channel. My last video was about Deone Walker coming out of Kentucky. By far the most impressive player to me because of the fact that, this guy at Kentucky did not have the success that some people wanted to see him ultimately have, right? The guy played like 450 snaps, and he only made 23 plays according to StatsBomb, which is not that good, right? 23 plays, 450 total snaps. And when you put the tape on, the thing with Deone Walker is that Kentucky plays a 3-man front, and we got to realize this, right? Most teams in college in the NFL are going to play a 4-man front, and when you switch to that 3-man front, it really changes things up. And Kentucky mostly played a 3-man front, and I think when you play a 3-man front, it makes it a lot harder because 2 of the 3 guys are going to get double-teamed almost on every single play, right? And the thing with playing a 3-man front like Kentucky did, that means that those defensive linemen are not going to have the same stats that other guys will ultimately have, right? And I think it's important for context to understand that that's why statistically Deone Walker may not have looked very good. But when you put the Senior Bowl tape on, this guy absolutely dominated. And I think he only was there for the first 2 days. He had 2 phenomenal days, and I think he left day 3. I don't think he practiced on day 3. But what's most impressive about Deone Walker is, this guy played 3 snaps, would come out, play the next someone else comes in for the next 3, someone else for the next 3, Walker for then, for that next 3 after that, right? And pretty much every single time he was out there, this guy was defeating the guy in front of him. Now, he wasn't actually tackling the running back on every single play, but there are multiple plays, and you guys can go and watch the tape. There are multiple plays where Deone Walker, takes his guy and pushes him back 4 yards into the backfield, and a guy's pulling, left to right, and Deone Walker takes the center, and he disrupts that entire pull, right? And then the defensive end that guard was supposed to kick out, that defensive end makes the play, right? And people don't realize that for Deone Walker to be able to do that, right, cause that disruption, it's absolutely impressive. And to me, Deone Walker was absolutely incredible. 6'7", 343 pounds, and he's fast and he's quick for that size. And some people want to say he plays a little bit too high. We got to realize this guy's long, he's lengthy, and you see him actually use that. He controls people. And he might look higher than guys, but trust me when I say this, he controls people really, really well. And of course, we're at the Senior Bowl, right? It's not like Kentucky's playing Yuba College or the College of the Prairies. This guy's playing some of the best offensive linemen coming out in the draft process, and he absolutely crushed people out there. And pretty much every single play he was making plays. Now, I do understand Deone Walker didn't play in the actual game, and, I wish he would have ultimately played in that game, but in the 2 practices that we saw in the full 11 on 11, he dominated, right? And I know there was a couple of one-on-one reps that some people talked about a little bit. I broke down the viral one where people are like, hey, he got absolutely stonewalled by a guy that was like 5'10". That clip is not what you think it is. It was not a pass rushing drill. It was a run blocking drill, right? He stood his guy up and he held his ground. He two-gapped it, which is exactly what he was probably doing in that drill. Again, I broke that down on my previous video. Go check out Deone Walker's tape. Absolutely loved him. By far the most impressive player for me was Walker. But there are some offensive linemen that really stood out as well. I want to talk about 2 offensive tackles. Both guys are first-round players to me. You got Arientoe, Ersery, and Anthony Belton. Both guys dominated. Both guys are probably going to be top 15 to 20 picks. Now, I can see Ersery, maybe teams don't like the quickness he has, but he did have a really, really good Senior Bowl. And the thing with Ersery is not only did he have a good Senior Bowl, but he held up against some of the best pass rushers, right? He went up against Mike Green. He went up against some of these other guys out there, and he absolutely held up. He had a lot of really good one-on-one reps in the drills. I don't personally, hold those super high, but he still did it, right? And Ersery, to me, was the guy that, I loved his tape coming in. I still had question marks about how quick is this guy, right? Like side to side. Can he change direction? Can he hit that landmark? He proved that he can, right? And I think Ersery is going to become a really, really, really good football player. I think there's a chance he's offensive tackle 1. This class, it is kind of hard still to really figure out who that offensive tackle 1 is. I will say Ersery definitely climbed the board for me. He's one of the top 3 or 4 tackles in this class for sure. He's a first-round pick. Belton is another guy that really, really stood out to me. With Belton, what I really wanted to see coming in was his measurables, right? Because we knew the tape, right? The tape is a tape, right? You cannot deny the fact that Anthony Belton dominates people, and he crushes people. He throws people. He's nasty. He's physical. He's tough, and he's going to beat the shit out of you. And we saw that on tape with Belton in college, and when he got to the Senior Bowl, he had so many winning reps. He had a couple of pancake blocks. The guy really held his own, and he impressed me, right? And I think with Belton, if you're able to do that at college, it's one thing, but when you do it at the Senior Bowl, it's a completely different thing. And we saw this guy absolutely be physical. And from a measurement perspective, he measured in at 6'0" which means he's 6'5" and 5/8, which is perfect, right? That's a really, really good height. He's 348 pounds, which is a lot heavier than I actually thought he would be. And the arm length is not a concern, 34 and 5/8 of an inch from the arm length perspective. Belton can actually play tackle in the NFL. So I think there's a real chance he's going to have an opportunity to play tackle. I will say this, right? When Tyler Smith came out of Tulsa, Tyler Smith is the current left guard of the Dallas Cowboys. When he was at Tulsa, he played left tackle, very similar to Anthony Belton. This guy was tossing people, dominating people. And I said there's a chance when Tyler Smith gets in the NFL, he'll be a top 5 to 10 guard if he moves to guard, which I expected him to. And Tyler Smith, I would say, is the best guard in the NFL by far, right? I think it's like tier 1, and there's no like 1A, 1B. It's Tyler Smith. He's the best guard, right? And it's because he physically just tosses people and beats the shit out of people. And I think Anthony Belton can be that type of player at the guard position. If that's what a team does, I think he'll be one of the best guards in the NFL if that's what a team ultimately does. But I would also consider drafting him to be an offensive tackle. The guy's had good tape. He had good tape at the Senior Bowl. He showed he can definitely play that position. Now, he did have some losing snaps, right? And I do think that that's one of the things that some teams could potentially hold against him. That can he consistently hit his landmark? From a technique standpoint, can he consistently get his arms on those defensive ends, especially the faster ones? He is athletic. He is strong. So we'll see what he'll end up kind of being ranked as. I do think there's a chance teams are going to value him as a guard as opposed to a tackle, even though we have those measurements. But we'll see as that time kind of comes. A couple of the guys that really, really impressed me. By far, the guy that impressed me the most on the offensive side of the football was Jalen Rivers coming out of Miami. So Jalen Rivers was an offensive tackle for Miami. He was on the national team. He measured in at 6'0", right? So he was 6'5" and 3/8 of 1 inch. 337 pounds for wingspan, right? 34-inch arms. The guy is big. He's strong. He's physical. And he was an offensive tackle for Miami, but he mostly only played guard at the Senior. But I don't think I saw any reps where this guy played tackle. One-on-one drills, team drills, the actual game, he played guard. And the guy was easily the most impressive player. The only guy that was able to pretty much win against any guy he went up against. And don't get me wrong, he had some losing reps, right? I saw Jalen Rivers get a double hand swipe by Junior Tafanu, for example. But Jalen Rivers, an example would be someone like Aeneas Pebbles out of Virginia Tech. The guy dominated everybody. Jalen Rivers held his own multiple times against Pebbles, right? Like, he was like the only guy on the inside, and Zabel did that as well. But Jalen Rivers had a really, really, really good Senior Bowl, and I'd argue this guy's going to be a top 2-round pick. I'd be very surprised if Rivers does not go that high. I did not have him on my radar early enough, right? He's a guy that I obviously never got to watch his actual tape, but this guy's really good. And I think this guy's going to end up being one of the better guards from this class. I think he's going to be one of the better guards in the NFL for a really, really long time. Big, strong, physical, moves really well, has a really good latch move, and has really good footwork to stay in front of these different defensive linemen. Rivers really impressed me, and he's absolutely a winner from the Senior Bowl. Another guy that I really, really like, and this one's interesting because, we had him ranked fairly high coming in. I thought he would go in the first round, but I think he definitely solidified himself as a first-round pick. Princely Umanmielen, I don't know exactly how to say his name. I should probably look that up. The Ole Miss defensive end, really, really, really solid football player, man. He's 6'4", 3/8", 264 pounds. He reminds me of Nolan Smith. I think he's a little bit heavier than Nolan Smith. Reminds me of Nolan Smith in the movement, right? Like, there were plays where this guy was like, he was going up against Anthony Belton, and he would fake Belton to the outside and quickly jump back inside, right? He has a good hezzy move. He has good pass rush technique. It's not super, super high, the pass rush technique, but it's good enough, right? And the movement's incredible. And Princely's one of those guys that definitely climbed the board for me. If there was one guy that consistently won against guys like Arientoe, Ersery, there was one guy that won against Anthony Belton, Josh Conerly. Princely was definitely that guy, right? He was the one guy that continuously had winning reps against these guys. I wouldn't be surprised if this guy ends up being like the second or third edge off the board. Would not be surprised if he's a top 10 pick. Guy's a really, really good football player. And I think Nolan Smith has kind of proven it out that, if you're a speed rusher, if you're a guy that's going to come off the edge, if you're a true edge, I should say, right? You can have success. You don't have to be like a second, third round pick where you're only really a pass rusher. You can defend the run. And we're seeing that with a guy like Nolan Smith. Princey's a guy to kind of keep an eye on. I think he's going to go a lot higher than what a lot of people think. Some people aren't going to agree with this next one, but we got Josh Conerly as a winner from the Senior Bowl. Some people are not going to agree with this. And the reason why they're not going to agree with this is because of the fact that if you're mostly on social media, you guys saw the one play that went viral where Mike Green tossed Josh Conerly, right? He like pancaked him. And that was a really bad rep, 100%, but that's a one-on-one rep, right? There is literally no moment in football at all. You will never have this moment where Mike Green is going to line up as a defensive end and you don't have to, consider, hey, is this a run or a pass? Or are they going to throw a screen underneath me? There's no moment where this guy doesn't have to think. Is the slide towards me? Is there a chip? Is it potentially a pin pull if a guy comes into motion? You're never going to have a moment where you're not thinking about those things. And in a one-on-one drill, you don't think about any of that. In a one-on-one drill, you're running through a guy and there's a quarterback on the other side or a guy standing there that you need to get to. Those moments are not realistic, right? One-on-one drills for O-linemen as well as cornerbacks are huge disadvantages. Yes, Josh Conerly lost that rep, but a lot of people don't know this. The very next rep, if you guys watch the actual one-on-one drills, right after that rep, the coaches actually reline them up, right? Usually what happens is they run the rep, takes 7 seconds, they get to the next guy, takes 7 seconds, they get to the next guy, and they just go through it, right? And they do like 70, 80 reps. When this play happened specifically that went viral on social media, they lined them right back up. And then Josh Conerly shut down Mike Green, right? He got his hands right to him. He shut him down. But no one posted that clip, and most people don't even know that they reran it back to back after that initial rep happened. Regardless of that one rep, Josh Conerly had a really, really good overall practice. He had a really good game as well. Now, don't get me wrong, he did struggle at times to anchor down, and I do have some question marks if Josh Conerly can actually play tackle at the next level, right? From a measurement perspective, it's not bad, right? He's 6'4" and 1/8 of an inch. He's 34 with his arms. He was also named the top offensive lineman on the national squad, which was a vote from the defensive lineman and the linebacker. So I want you guys to think about that, right? The guys he was going up against voted him as the best overall offensive lineman. To me, that means something, right? That means those guys recognize that Josh Conerly was having success on that national team, right? And I'm pretty sure Arientoe, Ersery, and Anthony Belton were on the same team, right? Pretty sure they're on the national team as well. And they still went ahead and voted for Josh Conerly. Even Jalen Rivers, pretty sure he was on the national team as well. And Rivers had a really, really good day as well. And Josh Conerly still got the vote from those guys on the other side because they went up against him. One-on-one reps, they went up against him. They were able to go up against him in the actual game, and they still ended up voting for him. Although I think the votes come before the game. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Another guy that really impressed me was great Zabel out of NDSU. He was the overall player at the Senior Bowl. What's interesting about Zabel is we knew this guy was going to be a good football player. I think he played left tackle at NDSU. We always knew this guy was going to be a good football player, but I didn't realize how good he was. He was probably the most dominant player at the Senior Bowl, right? There's just a good chance he was the most dominant offensive lineman. Although it's close between him and Jalen Rivers, from what I watched on tape, I'd even say Rivers was better than Conerly, although Conerly ended up winning that award. Zabel was solid, right? And a couple guys that I wasn't as high on were Mike Green and Shemar Stewart. They're good football players, don't get me wrong. I think both guys actually pulled out and didn't even finish or play in the game. The concern I had with those two guys is they looked really good in the one-on-one drills, but they didn't translate that into the actual team stuff. And I had some concerns with that, right? Like, don't get me wrong. I think Mike Green's a first-round pick no matter what. Stewart, I'm not 100% sure with. Stewart is 6'5", 281. I didn't see the bend and I didn't see the pass rush technique with Stewart, right? And to me, I hesitate with guys like that because in the NFL, in college it's a little bit different. You can use, and if you're not as fast in college, you can still beat tackles that are not going to be in the NFL. You can still beat them with speed. But in the NFL, every guy's fast, every guy's strong. So you have to rely on your skills, right? Your quickness and that explosiveness, unless it's elite, which with Stewart, it's not elite. Unless it's elite, you're not going to beat those guys in the NFL. So with a guy like Stewart, he's going to have to use his pass rush technique. And I didn't see enough from him at the Senior Bowl, specifically in the 11-on-11s as well as in the actual game as well. Although he didn't obviously end up playing in the game. But Mike Green's another guy where I really like Mike Green's tape coming in.
Now, before we go forward, I want to just take a second to give a big shout out to the sponsor of this channel because this content would not be possible without Underdog. If you guys have never utilized Underdog before, trust me, man, you guys are missing out. I don't do traditional fantasy sports that often. I did do one league this year, but generally speaking, I'm not really doing it anymore. And that's mostly because of Underdog. Underdog has this game that I really, really enjoy. It's called Pick'em. Essentially, you're going to go out there and just make picks that you think are going to be right. They'll have pretty much every pick you can think of for every player, and they have multiple categories as well. So an example would be, I think Aiden O'Connell is going to throw for 125 yards. And you're essentially just going to pick higher on that, right? I think he'll have more than 125 yards. You might say, hey, Dak Prescott's going to have at least 2 touchdowns, and pick higher on that. You might say Caleb Williams is going to have a rushing touchdown. And some of those stats also give you multipliers, right? So usually for quarterbacks rushing it in, right? That's something most quarterbacks aren't doing every single week. You'll get like a 4x multiplier on that. So depending on the multiplier, depending on how many picks, you can turn $5 into $400, $1,000, right? Whatever it ends up being. Obviously, it depends on the multiplier, but Underdog to me is one of those places that I pretty much do every single week at this point. Very fun. It makes like watching the Jets and the Dolphins without Tua. It makes them interesting, right? So check out Underdog. If you guys have never used them before, it is the best place. Trust me when I say that. Go to underdogfantasy.com, use my promo code that you guys see on the screen.
But Mike Green's another guy where I really like Mike Green's tape coming in, right? I watched his tape at Marshall, but there were moments on tape where he kind of went away, where you didn't really see him do a whole lot. And although he had a great one-on-one where he was able to beat guys like Josh Conerly, and he beat other guys as well, right? Although he had a lot of really good moments in the one-on-one stuff, Mike Green, it didn't translate into the actual 11-on-11. Like, yeah, he had a couple winning reps, but when you think about a guy like Deion Walker or a guy like Princely, these guys had multiple plays where they're getting to the quarterback. With Mike Green, I saw this guy get shut down multiple times. And I'm not saying he made no plays, and I'm not saying don't think he's a first round pick, but he was good. But I wasn't as sold with him as I wish I was coming out of the Senior Bowl, right? Aeneas Pebbles was another dominant defensive tackle, but he measured in at 6 feet. I think that's going to be a concern. Although he has probably the best tape from a defensive tackle, and he would be the first defensive tackle taken, the fact that he doesn't have the size, he might not actually be that. But we'll see what ends up happening, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you did, consider subscribing. And I will see you guys next time with another video.